We're going big time here. We got the real guests with like real broadcasting chops with us for the first time.
That's right.
Maybe not the first time, but we definitely have the most accomplished.
Most accredited, I believe is the word.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they say from a media standpoint? Accredited media. Does that sound about Carc?
Yeah, unless you're screwing up coaches' names and who got drafted like I did last night. But yeah.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, Paul Carcaterra, the man that needs no introduction, and the most popular guy, I would say, in all of sport, in all of lacrosse media. I'll say sports media. Yeah, we'll just go. We'll hyperbole here. Most popular guy in all of sports media.
Lacrosse media is a polarizing place. I feel like it's hard to be well liked across the board in lacrosse media.
Of course. Especially with everyone having a fake Twitter name, right?
Before we go into the analysis, I think my favorite lighthearted moment from last night is the fourth round. They to the kids do the picks, and so we're kind of going through the names, and Drew Carter's making sure that he's got the right pronunciations, and we're kind of like who are these guys? Like they aren't on any board, and Drew's like, cool it, like they're just the kids. I'm just making sure. And then he says one name, and Carc's like, "Oh yeah, no, his dad." And it's like, of course you do. Of course you know his dad.
I do know his dad. He was actually a teammate of mine, and one of those short stick D middies you guys know all too well that thinks they can play offense.
I've been there before.
Well, Mitch, you watched. We were in the eye of the storm. You watched. What's your biggest question for us now that we've had a chance to kind of take a step back and kind of look at things?
Yeah, no, I think I would love to hear a little of behind the scenes that goes into the prep behind the draft. I think that's really you see the polished production, and I get to see what you're doing behind the scenes. But I think illuminating that for the fans of what goes into this? And I think the first question I had is if you can talk me through a little bit about, what are these coaches doing to really, one, assess their needs, and then two, how are they evaluating talent? And now there's GM, right? So there's some support there, but maybe talk through what you guys have seen or maybe been surprised by the analysis that goes in by the coaches to figure out what they want to do on draft night.
Yeah,
I think for starters, I think the most important thing that gets established is what Ryan does for the draft, and he's able to identify the needs, right? The needs of each team, and making a PLL roster is a daunting task, and it's anything but a sure bet for a rookie coming in that gets drafted for second, third, or fourth round. That spot is a slam dunk. Just because of the talent. So I think Ryan's position draft night is so critical in regards to piecing together what the team needs. I can identify the talent with regards to their college careers, why they're pro ready, their special traits, their attributes, their backstories, and all that. But I think it's a really nice marriage between what I'm doing and what Ryan's doing, because Ryan's essentially doing what a coach would do. And when I listen to Ryan sometimes, I say to myself, why doesn't the coach just take everything that he has here and then he can fill in his draft, right? He could do that because he's so good at understanding what worked for that team the prior year, what is a void for that team, and how it can be fixed. And I have the player, I think, that could fix that or that could mess with those needs. From my perspective.
Carc, have you seen in real time that happen? On your prevent coaches calls, or Ryan brings up a need and the coach is like, oh yeah, that's right. Maybe we should go that way.
Yes, I do. I mean, because he's so well prepared. He loves the league like I do. But I just think that he has another understanding for what's taking place and what worked for that team, what didn't work, where they need to address it. And typically, I think that, our brains work differently, whether it's on a broadcast. I see things differently. He sees things differently, but it works together because, Ryan doesn't doesn't have the bandwidth that I have from a college perspective of watching like every team play that has a prospect, whether it's Division II kid like Kyle Lewis, who was drafted. Like I watched tape on that kid from Adelphi. Like I knew his special characteristics and why he had a chance to play at the next level. The Regneri kid from Tufts, like I'm spending time watching them play. I think Ryan is spending more time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, I don't want to speak for you. You're spending more time dissecting the actual teams, what worked, what didn't work, and how they can be addressed.
No, that's exactly how the division of labor works from a broadcast perspective. I'm doing a deep dive into every kind of off-season change and even like little micro transactions that might fly under the radar with, the Archers lose John Robbins, who was their second LSM, and meanwhile he goes now to a team that needed that second LSM, which was Atlas. Like that little micro transaction kind of impacts how their team needs unfold. And Carc, as he said, has such an incredible kind of encyclopedia. I don't know if that is appropriate anymore because I don't have kids use encyclopedias, but knowledge of like every single player.
AI, we just call it AI, AI type knowledge, a large language model knowledge
of all of these players, across the entire, landscape. I think, and then kind of layering that onto the teams. It's really no different than how a college team would approach the recruiting process in terms of, they're watching a ton of games, whether those be live or film. They're going and seeing teams in person to get a live evaluation. And then they're doing a lot of networking behind the scenes in terms of having conversations, with college coaches about players, understand and leaning on their relationships.
I was going to ask, how much of that fits do they research? Or
Big time. More than you would think, actually, especially as it gets to the later rounds, in terms of kind of finding a diamond in the rough, or let's just be practical here. A lot of those conversations with the coaches are what are the players' post-college plans?
Right.
Does he want to be, for lack of better words, a full-time lacrosse player? Or does he have any sort of like professional aspirations that might negatively impact his ability to dedicate himself to the game? So they've got to do that diligence. And I think that information, Carc, that information has become more and more valuable as the league has gotten more competitive. Is this kid going to be all in or not?
Well, and I got to imagine there's probably more of those kids now, right? There's more kids because that is
absolutely. Mitch, I make the connection of what you're getting at like this, okay, where there's more kids like that. When the MLL started in the early 2000s, 80% of the league was working like 9 to 5 out of lacrosse jobs. The other 20% were coaches, and they made it work. Like they pieced things together. They were maybe involved in the game of lacrosse somehow professional. I would say now it's like a flip. Right. Yeah. Like guys are now 80%, and the desk job guy is a dying breed. And to be honest, the only guy that has done it in the modern era, in my mind, and jump in here, Ryan, but I think the only guy from a time perspective and withstanding the test of time and playing at the super high elite level in the last 8 to 10 years is Mike Earhart, that worked 9 to 5 and he found a way. There's been flashes in the pan 2-3 years here, but if you're going to be Wall Street and you're going to be at a desk, you have a shelf life in pro lacrosse. That's just the reality.
Well, Earhart, founding member of the Breakfast Club.
I was good, not to pump your tire, but I mean, Mitch gave him the blueprint in terms of, how to do that, in terms of, off-season conditioning, in-season reps, creating kind of these little mini opportunities for training and conditioning and creating a culture, in New York City that afforded guys that were sitting at a desk all the time. It's like, hey, if you want to have a 10+ year career, this is the dedication, the sacrifice, and the discipline you have to do that. What's amazing is you were doing lacrosse full time and also doing that, which is kind of amazing. But yeah,
that's what it takes. You have to dedicate, like, and the league is so competitive now, and the level of play is so high. You have to dedicate hours and hours every day to getting better at your craft, in addition to whatever else.
Mitch, here's the deal too. Like Mike Earhart was able to do it, and he obviously sacrificed a ton. but there's only so many hours in a day. So when Mike Earhart, towards the end of his career, he gets married, he has a child, he's playing lacrosse, and he's working in New York City, a 9-to-5 desk job. That becomes like almost next level hard to figure out, right? Like you throw in the personal family aspect of it. If you're a coach or you're around lacrosse all the time and you're getting your workout with the team and stuff, that's different. But if you're Mike Earhart, like where do you even find those hours later in the career of a lacrosse player when you're being, torn in all these different directions? That's really tough. The other thing that I just want to put a ball on how everything works together. This is a perfect example of it. So we get to speak to these coaches. I know that the Philadelphia Water Dogs are pounding their head over who to pick with their first pick. Is it Silas Richmond? Gives you like a bookend to CJ Kirst on the right side. Sowers behind. You have an attack for 8 to 10 years, and you don't have to draft another attackman forever. But then you have the Kieran McCardle situation. He's late in his career. Do you draft another attackman? How do you manage him coming through the box? Or do you draft Matt Collison, the lefty midi? So if you look at like Boyle's research on what the Water Dogs need, they need a lefty midi, okay? And they end up drafting Silas Richmond number 5 overall. So Collison starts, falling. And I had him as my number 4 overall prospect. But I also know, based on Boyle's research, like they need a lefty midi. When that second round pick for the Water Dogs came up, based on everything Boyle did, our conversations with the Water Dogs would have been farm on it that they were picking Matt Collison. Just based on those 3 moving parts, like coach's conversation, what I know about Collison as a player, and Boyle's research on what they actually need. Because lefty midi, I mean, off the top of my head, they have McCombie. Who else do they have as a lefty midi on that team?
Courier.
He's pretty good.
Courier, but that guy's at a unicorn. Now, you can't even count him, and he's made his own position.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny. I think we were actually during a break, and we were coming back, and we were going to look at the big board, and the Water Dogs were there, and it was like to your point, Carc, it's like Collison's going here. And I actually bumped into Coach T, afterwards, and I didn't get this on the broadcast, but I remember the old adage, more games are lost than won, right? Kind of that adage. I feel like the Water Dogs draft, you could just apply that statement to their draft. Like they just sat there and they were just like, so nobody's going to pick Richmond. So seriously, no one's going to pick him. Okay, fine. We'll pick him. Then they get to the next pick. It's like, no one's picked Matt Collison. Okay, I guess we'll pick him. They just sat there and they just let guys slip and fall to them. And they're like, well, if you're not going to, okay, I guess we'll be the team that just gobbles up the next best talent available that's kind of fallen into our laps.
Well, you talk about him being willing to bet the farm on. How about if you had to put all your chips on the table, Carc, who did you think was going number 1 to the Archers with the first overall pick prior to the draft?
Yeah, well, for starters, I like to bet farms because I was born in the Bronx and then grew up in Yorktown. So the farm that I don't have is easy to bet. But I would have to say I was shocked with Aidan McGuire going number 1. And this is no jab at Aidan McGuire. He's the highest rated short stick possibly ever, because Danny Logan, as good as Danny Logan is, Boyle, and that's the reality is he was kind of a two-way guy. He played offense for a couple of years at Denver, and he just morphed into Danny Logan. This kid, Aidan McGuire, he is on another level as a short stick midi, but there's a few reasons it shocked me. You don't draft that position number 1 typically, unless it's this unicorn of a guy, which he kind of is, and there's a crazy need, which the Archers didn't have. The Archers have really good short stick middies who are all young. Piper Bond, Connor Marr, Bo Pedersen. None of those guys have played in the league for more than 3 years. They're all 25 and under. And your offense was dead last in every major statistical category. So it just didn't line up for me. And that's no slight at Aidan McGuire. So that draft pick just completely shocked me. I mean, it is a guy in Chris Bates that's kind of gone off the grid a little bit with draft picks in the past, but like it just didn't line up for me. So I was really, really surprised because I felt like they needed offense, and there were a couple guys that would have fit the bill, whether it was Joey Spallina, and you kind of give him the keys to running the offense as an ex-quarterback guy, or you draft Silas Richmond from Albany, who's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's got Canadian inside skills, but he's got range as a shooter, and he's a super underrated passer. Him on the right side with, all those lefties you have. I mean, they got a lot of lefties on that team. So, like, that draft pick kind of threw me off, and it changed the draft. Outside of the number 4 pick, which we can get to with the Denver Outlaws taking Evan Plunkett, I thought Aidan McGuire at 1 was a big kind of question for me, just because of everything I explained with lack of needs at that position and what they did need based on all the research Boyle would do too. And I think you would probably agree with me there.
Yeah, I think I would have gone chalk and gone Spallina just in terms of what you needed offensively. And I think his ability just to kind of raise your floor in terms of like his ability to blend in really seemingly any offensive scheme and system. I think he gets better the more quality players that are around him and surround him in terms of his ability to play off ball, his ability to distribute the rock and get others involved. And like, archers are going to be in a bunch of rock fights. And I think Spallina can kind of navigate those and kind of get you to where you need to be in terms of a number to win the game. Richmond, obviously, I think would have been a bigger upside. But I would have gone chalk and gone Spallina. Understanding they went McGuire, Carc, the Archers, I took a step back and looked at their draft. And I feel like in the moment, I probably would have been more critical of them had it not been for the Outlaws trade up. I
agree with you, because where did the Archers get better? Yeah, where there was a need. Like, they beefed up the short stick D midi position. Now they have 4 great guys, but that wasn't their problem last year. I asked holding teams low was not their problem. Scoring goals was.
Yes, and they got Steins at 9, which I think was a bit of a reach, and then and then they got Leo Johnson late, which I like. The one that in the moment we kind of were talking more about the player as opposed to the fit. Schaller in the first pick of the 3rd round. Archers, they came in last year. They were the last place team. They need bodies now. I don't think if you're Atlas, you're the defending champs. If you're Outlaws and you were in the championship game, you have the luxury of stashing a guy. Archers, you came in last. You can't stash a guy for a year.
They're going to win games 1-0 with all their teammates.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And Ryan, you mentioned about Spallina, and I get a lot of questions about Spallina, because I'm an advocate of his game. And you brought up a couple points, like raising the floor, and the better players and pieces you put around him, the better he is. I've seen a lot of dynamic lacrosse players at the attack position in the last 25 years, right? From Mike Powell to Lyle Thompson to Pat Spencer to CJ Kurtz, the list goes on and on. I will say, though, from an intellect standpoint, and I'm not just pumping your tires, Ryan, Joey Spallina thinks the game is close to you as anyone. A lot of those other guys I mentioned, they were probably quicker than you and Spallina. They were probably faster and probably benched more than you. I would venture to say. The reality is Joey Spallina's superpower, okay? And look, he's really skilled, just like you were. His superpower was your superpower. His IQ and his lacrosse brain. He makes the right decisions. When he makes mistakes, it's oftentimes because he's putting himself in, a physical altercation. Maybe his pride is on the line, and he wants to see if he can back into a guy like John Schroeder, which probably isn't the smartest thing in the world. He gets into some of those spots. But when he's playing the game freely and he's letting his mind take over, he thinks like you. And I want a guy like that in pro lacrosse. That's the reality. So that's where I think the Archers drop the ball. And that's why I always had Joey Spallina as my number one player on the big board. But Mitch, to kind of also circle around here with draft night and how it's working, if Ryan and I sat down today, we could be a lot more critical because we could digest these drafts and we could look at the Archers and say, like, wow, like this is really what they did. Everything is moving at 100 miles an hour. There's 100 guys that we've evaluated. There's all these moving parts. The next pick's coming in. So, like, a lot of it's reactive. And I think if you can decompress, you take a deep breath, and we were able to have, like, a show on it, and this is essentially what we're doing a day later, I think we'd pick up on a lot of those things. Ryan, do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, 100%, because like we'll get to the Outlaws, because which we did get into last night, because like we just have to get to the next thing, and the Archers thing. I think when we look at it holistically, like now that I have a breath, I'm like, what happened? What are we doing here? And one more thing, just to put a bow on the Spallina that I was thinking about that we didn't get in the broadcast last night is, Carc, if you think back a year ago, we were questioning a Syracuse attackman's athleticism and ability to win a matchup. And then you get to the summer and Owen Hiltz is running by guys and tied for the league per game. And like, like, it's like, here we are a year later and we're saying the same thing about another guy. But
yeah, you know what? I think you're right. And here's something real quick on that. I think the pro game magnifies lacrosse IQ even more. And a guy like Owen Hiltz is running by guy because the spacing is better and the ball movement's even faster than college. So like, I think IQ in lacrosse brain, because everyone's skilled on that field. I think that's a big deciding factor in what tilts a player like an Owen Hiltz or a Joey Spallina.
Well, just every window is amplified by so much more. Like I just watching defensively, I'm like, man, if you give up an inch, a guy can catch and shoot. Or if you give up an inch with a guy dodging, they're going to get by you and then make the next play. And that's the difference. And it's like, yeah, for offensive players, you got to be able to think through and find those windows and fire it in there when it makes sense. And defensively, you just got to physically be able to cover so much ground and do all those little tiny cheats and hacks and having your stick up as opposed to on the gloves, but up in a lane, things like that are just amplified big time, I think.
Absolutely.
So getting to the inflection point of the first round, and every draft has an inflection point. It was clearly
you took the punch right away with the unseen short stick D midi first round pick. So everyone shook that off and kept going.
Well, the first three guys, I think that they were going to go three. It was just a matter of maybe necessarily what order.
Got it. You thought McGuire would be in that top three anyway.
Yeah. If he didn't go one, he was going to go maybe two or three. He wasn't going to drop far. So I think the first three guys, like, there's not a lot of debate.
He's just aware.
He's just aware.
Yeah.
Evan Plunkett. So Outlaws trade up, Chaos trade down. And then they pick up 2 picks in the process. Outlaws trade up, and then they take Evan Plunkett. And again, this is Evan Plunkett, I think, is going to be a good fit for Denver.
Also, a former Trilogy camper back in the day.
So this is nothing to Carc.
He's got to be good then. He's got to be good.
This is nothing against Plunkett. It was more of the strategy from a Denver perspective of trading up to get a guy that would have definitely, right? Like Carc, he would have been at 7, and then you give up 2 picks to do so. And meanwhile, the flip side of that is Chaos only had 2 picks going into it. They drop down to 7. They get the guy that they would have taken at 4, and then they pick up 2 extra picks. That to me was a masterclass by Spencer Ford and just a reach for Denver.
I agree. And here's the deal. We all played like little pickup football when you're a kid, right? And you see all your friends and you know who's better than the next guy. Like, look, if there's 40 kids there, if you're the 7th best player, you're pretty good. Like no one's questioning your talent if you're evaluating Evan Plunkett. It's a guy that over 20 assists 4 straight years in college as a midfielder. Okay, he's a very, very good player. But if I'm picking this football team, and I know there are definitely 6 guys better than why am I going to trade up when I know I can get him at 7? Like, that's the way I felt about the whole thing. It just didn't add up, because the other piece of this too is, even if Evan is 7, I don't even know if I'm evaluating him at 7. And the reason being is he's an Army West Point grad in a couple of weeks. Ryan, since the PLL inception in 2019, what player who's had military obligations has played consistently for 3 years?
I mean, the one that comes to my mind is Boltus, but I don't know that he played consistently for 3 years. And he's back in the league. He's just kind of been in and out.
In and out. So, like, that's why, like, even at 7, you're not 7 for me. Like, and I couldn't be more gracious for the career path that you've chosen. I have more respect for you than anyone. And we're so lucky that we have people like Evan Plunkin, who are Division I lacrosse players, but also going to be serving our country. Like, the gratitude that I have is, I can't even put into words, but the reality of all of this, based on being a pro lacrosse player, if you are the 7th best player, which you could have taken him at 7, if you're really doing a deep dive and you were to break down the numbers for people who have military service, you're not even getting like 2 years most of the time, 90% of the time. And like, and this is a franchise in the Denver Outlaws that drafted Brendan Nichter and got a Rookie of the Year out of him. And by year 2, he fizzled out, and year 3, he didn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, to what we were talking about earlier, like, you know, that 80% of guys who are doing lacrosse full time, like, you don't have that luxury at Army. You are a full-time United States military officer. Like, that's your job, and you can make it work to a degree, but you have a full-time commitment that you have to honor.
A year ago, Jason Eicher was a Toraton finalist and went undrafted.
Yeah.
Like a Toraton finalist.
It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. So, like, the whole Plunkett, I don't see a universe based on what those other teams, and this goes back to Mitch, Ryan's prep, and my evaluations coming together. The reality of all of this is, I didn't see a scenario based on Ryan's needs of all these teams that someone else has taken Plunkett before 7 anyway. So you traded up 3 spots and you gave 2 picks.
Right. And that was what Ryan was saying earlier when he first came in. It's just like, you threw away those 2 picks essentially because you could have got what you wanted anyway. But that brings a Princetonian to your guy over at the Chaos, Chad Palumbo, falling at that 7th spot, which, you know, I'm sure the Chaos are pumped about.
I thought Spencer Ford like did a master class and I think this is the other thing, like from a macro league wide perspective, is the infusion of the general manager position. Way more exciting, selfishly, from a media standpoint, in terms of just like way more maneuvering, way more trades that have happened. Whereas I think, like, when you have the head coach / GM, there's like the emotional attachment to certain guys, you need the locker room, whereas the GMs are like wheeling and dealing, between Spencer Ford.
Wheeling and dealing, and also it's checks and balances too, because, like, look, Chris Bates is a phenomenal coach, and he's drafted really well in the past. But if he has a GM, then he needs to coexist with that person and also figure out, like, do we really want to do this? Like, deep dive into everything in terms of what their voids are on this current roster, where they really struggled. But let's be honest, look at the 2 franchises that did a great job in the draft last night. I think, you know, there was a lot of good things that happened, but the 2 that separated for me were the Philadelphia Water Dogs with star power. They got 2 top 5 guys in the first 2 rounds, and they got the second guy not even in the beginning of the second round in Matt Collison. So star power. Who's the GM of that? Dave Cottle. He's been around pro lacrosse for decades. Who's the other guy that you just talked about that was wheeling and dealing and really did a nice job in this draft? Spencer Ford. Been around pro lacrosse for decades. So, like, that GM role just really popped last night in those 2 specific instances.
So we've talked about, some surprises, some flubs, some jumps. What about anything? And Carc, you probably have the best sense of this. Any storylines like looking down, maybe off the field, that were really cool or you thought really popped?
I was surprised at how many Syracuse guys got drafted. I mean, they won the night in terms of one school. Just is draft pick after draft pick. They have now, I think, pressure heading into the NCAA tournament. Like, you have all these PLL draft guys. You have Gary Gate coaching them. Like, the time is now. The other wrinkle that's going to be interesting, and I saw Pete Thamel from ESPN reported it this morning. The NCAA cabinet, in terms of eligibility, is meeting, I think, as soon as today to discuss fifth year. So what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks? Yeah, like guaranteeing a fifth year. So the NCAA just doesn't want to deal with waivers, with guys going for their sixth, seventh, eighth year. So they're saying you have 5 years to figure out how you want to play. If you get injured 1 year, you still have 5 years. If you get injured 2 years, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, but you're going to have to get this done in 5 years. There are some exemptions I've read. Like there's the military exemption. There's the religious exemption, and that would fall into line with, like, a scenario there would be like BYU and the Mormon missions. And then the third I read was like if a female, gets pregnant and there's a maternity leave type thing. Those are the exemptions that I read as of last week. What's going to happen if this thing moves really fast? I mean, you can get drafted. Your eligibility isn't done. Once you sign a contract, your eligibility's toast. So these next couple of weeks could be interesting. It's not a waste for these franchises because, Boyle, correct me if I'm wrong, they hold the rights for a year.
If they go back, they don't. But I wonder if the PLL is
because of this new rule, though. Because of this new rule, how there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, I wonder if the league has to do some sort of pivot, just
what a
given
curveball that would be.
just some unintended consequences of that decision and not knowing in advance. I think that's like they might have to give a little bit of like a free pass. I'm going to layer on one more narrative that was this kind of a sneaky kind of thing that we didn't like get to all that much, but this goes back to when we played in the MLL. You saw a lot of picks with a geographical kind of element to it, right? And given the proximity, PLL, we've never really seen that based on the tour-based model. So I don't know if this is kind of correlational or causational or just really a coincidence. But there was 3 guys last night. The Utah Archers took Steins,
right,
the Utah player, and then the Cannons took 2 local, air quote, local guys in terms of Ip from Harvard. Ip, sorry. Yeah, thanks.
Ip, yeah.
I didn't get as much sleep as everybody after the longer drive. And then Regneri from Tufts. So like 3 players just top of mind went like in market, so to speak.
And yeah, that's true. That's really neat too. But to dovetail off of that also, and I'll double up on 2 of those guys. I thought it was neat because it wasn't the deepest draft talent-wise. This wasn't a draft of 2 years ago, even last year. The 2 years ago draft was insane. Like how many guys actually panned out too, not just the star power, but like guys popping in the 3rd and 4th round that are like all pro level. I think this draft didn't have that kind of depth star power-wise. I mean, think about it. A couple of years ago, TJ Malone was a 3rd round pick. He's a 2-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. And he ends up, being a Rookie of the Year too. Like so, like there was a lot of those situations. This draft, I think, was different where they took some chances. And 2 of those guys you mentioned, like Regneri's a smaller, slighter guy from Tufts. He got exceptional stick skills. He was drafted. I don't think he would have been drafted in one of those deep drafts. Kyle Lewis, exceptional quickness, 2-handed midi, can get to the rack, is really, really electric with his feet. Played for Adelphi, national champion, game-winning goal in the national championship a year ago. People haven't been taking flyers on D2 guys as of late. They took a flyer on him. And then Ryan Steins is a great story because he was under the radar as a recruit from Charlotte, North Carolina. And he goes to Utah, not a proven entity in college lacrosse, and does great work there, and then gets drafted by the Utah Archers. So there's some cool stories that you would want to root for the underdog.
Are either of you aware, is this the first draft where a Division 1, 2, and 3 players have been picked in the first 3 rounds?
Ooh.
We'd have to dig deep on that, but I would have to say yes. Like,
Yeah.
it hasn't been common that D2 and D3 guys are drafted more on the D3 front, but like a D2, who's the last D2 guy to be drafted in the PLL?
Knee-jerk reaction is yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to get a stats research on that, producer Andrew Goldberg. But I think in terms of like short answers, like yes, I can't think of any D1, D2, and D3. We've had a D3 guy, here and there. D2, I can't recall. Like I'm thinking of some names, and I just don't know if the schools they went to were D2 or not. So
you're looking at like Tampa, you're looking at like Delphi, you're looking at some of those top programs. But and then were either of you surprised? No goalies, no face-off men. It's a position where theoretically there's only 2 spots in every team, but still to have 0 go. Were you guys surprised?
I wasn't. I think to be a goalie in this league, it's a special talent, and you're not just drafting goalies to draft. The one kid that I thought is a pro level type goalie, I think, is Carc from Princeton. Ryan Carc. I think he's that level of a player. I also think next year there's a couple guys at each position that are really going to move the needle in those spots. You have Brady Wambach from UNC. He's tearing it up. He's probably the most dominant face-off guy in college since Trevor Baptiste and T.D. Erlin. And then Johnny Mullins, not having the greatest year at Syracuse, but he's just built to be a PLL face-off guy. He's great on the ground. He can score goals. Like, he just gives you an added dimension. Like, those 2 guys are getting drafted next year. And we'd almost guarantee that. And then you have like a guy like Caleb Fyock, who's just built. He's got everything going for him. He's got the name. He's got the swagger. They call him the Big Tasty. Like, he's going to be a pro goalie. Like, he's awesome, and he's just got that flair to him. He's going to get drafted, and the reality is like these guys aren't moving that much. I mean, Blaze Reardon and his backup have been in the league for 10 years. Yeah. It's like a quarterback, and they have proven backups. And you think of like a guy like Austin Tout, like he also just like confirmed that he could still play if you watch him play in the Champ Series. So it's like, where are you going to draft guys to upgrade?
Yeah. Well, and just to echo Carc, like short answer is yes. Or no, whatever you asked. I was not.
You were unsurprised.
I was unsurprised. Face off definitely. Like, I just didn't see a guy. Carc mentioned the guy. The only team that I thought was potentially whips taking Carc at 32. But I think Stags has a relationship with Carc going back to Hun, and I feel like he can maybe get him as an undrafted guy. Right. And at a certain point, like whether it's a face-off guy or goalie guy, like to the longevity point, like, and also like, are you just horse trading? Like are you if you get a guy, it's like, is he even better than the guy you have? And in which case, like, well, why are you even drafting him then?
Well, I was going to say, like the NLL, where how goalies are so important, but they really don't reach their prime or their peak play typically until they've been in the league for a handful of years. It's kind of reversed with the PLL. It's almost like you got to go with the best available right away, and then they typically just stay. Yeah. It's like hard to develop. I would think it's harder to develop.
Yeah. And the quarterback. It's such a huge decision, right? Like we saw this last year with the Water Dogs. It's like they're changing all the time. It's like, who's your guy? Like pick a lane. Like the team and the defense has to have like an understanding in terms of who their leader is there. Like, you need to kind of establish that. The old, like, if you've got 2, that means you really don't have 1. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point with all that too, I'll add to it from a different dimension. Like, if you're the chaos, chances are, like, when Blaze leaves, like, you might need to get 2 goalies. And why would you bring a goalie in to battle with Austin Tout, who is like Blaze Reardon's close friend? They speak the same language. That goalie room is so cohesive. Even if you could get a goalie who's slightly better than Austin Tout, and Austin Tout's really good, but just say Ryan Carc just saved the ball at a couple percentage points higher than Tout. Are you really going to like upset the locker room and risk that? Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's a big gamble, and for one save per season or 2 saves per season.
And what to say of their iPad instant replay.
And there's no way Ryan Product chews gum better than Austin Count. There's no way he chews gum better than Austin Count. There's just no
Austin
possible.
Count was responsible for like
Yeah,
4 goals.
I was gonna say he saved more goals via the iPad.
He had like 4 goals
via,
last year. In terms of that, his iPad, prowess.
Awesome. Well, one, I love when when they're able to get the live cam on. I think that the Tufts was it looked like Tufts was at a restaurant or bar, and then it had the Army was together in their film room. Like when they get the reactions, I think is amazing. Do you think there is a point in the future where they can get to a live draft or some version where it's like a little bit more of it's tough, I know, because it's in season, right?
Yeah.
Never, like Silas Richmond had a game during the draft.
Yeah.
But does it get to a place, or what changes would you guys like to see to kind of bring that excitement and the energy into the draft?
I think it's going to be really tough unless they slip the seasons, and the seasons are totally lockstep together, like pro football and college football. I would like to see possibly talking to a player a little bit more right after that. I think that could be really neat. Like in a case like last night, you talk to anyone from Joey Spallina, who's kind of been known to be wanting to be a pro lacrosse player since he's 6, right? Like that's a cool little story. And then the underdog, like the Regnery kid from Tufts, and you see that passion in a locker room, in a group of players that rarely get that limelight, right? So I think there's two totally different stories within those examples, but to me, they're great opportunities to humanize and tell them.
Yeah. That and I think the other next logical move from just a kind of a league-wide perspective, and I think we're years away from this, but we show those shots of kind of those watch parties, right? And I think you look at kind of the big 4 in terms of major sports, and then having a live audience,
yeah.
Right? In terms of we're doing this in the studio, and we're reacting to each other. And then we're kind of showing these vignettes of these places, but obviously I think as the sport continues to evolve and grow, is there an opportunity to pivot and then have a kind of a live audience and get a crowd reaction? Because I think
the commissioner,
exactly. Exactly. I mean, some of the
just bringing the anti-Paul Rabel crew, sit them on one side.
You look at whether and some of the memorable experiences. I'm thinking back of NFL drafts of the Philadelphia Eagles fans, right? When they I think it was when they picked Donovan McNabb, and they're like, "What are you doing?" It's meanwhile this guy turns out to be your franchise quarterback for a decade.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because Mitch, you got to understand something. Although we might not agree with the Denver Outlaws trading up to get Evan Plunkett at 4, when Evan's in there with his Army West Point teammates, that's a really, really cool situation and moment. It's hard for us to rain on that kids draft parade, right? It's hard. A day later, it's really easy. This is a great platform to talk about everything after it's digested. These are dreams for a lot of these kids, all of them, right? And they get their name called once to be a professional lacrosse player. And yes, lacrosse isn't football and it's not the NBA, but it's that kid's NBA or it's that kid's NFL. So it's really hard to be overcritical in that moment, if it makes sense.
But I think you guys do a great job of keeping it positive. And yeah, it's so easy to be the armchair quarterback afterwards, and that's why they pay you guys the big bucks. But it's also that's the fun of it, because we talked about TJ Malone, right? Dropped to the 3rd round. There's some foresight there by that staff that hey, he's good. Stagnita, he's gonna pan out, he's gonna be okay, and clearly he did. So I think you can analyze all you want, but why they play the game, right?
Yeah, we have to walk a fine line. We have a job to do, and that's to analyze the draft in itself. So whether it's a good pick, if it fits a team need, if you got value there, right? All of the things that it's our job professionally to critique upon, to opine on, right? And then the flip side is exactly what Carc said, is like, we don't want to do that while, yucking the yum of the player, right? Like it's his big day. It's his big moment. We need to do our job, but we also want to celebrate that player and his moment.
Yeah.
And how do we kind of thread that needle? And that's what we hope to do.
Well, to put an exclamation point on something that Carc brought up earlier, like that's where, if you can get an interview with the players, if you can personalize that and show that excitement, because I love those videos where their teammates are going nuts, and but then to hear about their journey and how they got there. And like you said, Carc, like, it might not be like, I wanted to be an NHL hockey player. I got drafted in the MLL. These kids probably grew up wanting to be PLL lacrosse players, or at least for the last 10 years.
Like Silas Richmond, for example. Silas Richmond, who got drafted 5th by the Philadelphia Water Dogs. I spent an entire day with him from 8 in the morning to 5 at night 2 weeks ago up in Albany, filming a through X with him. And like the theme of that through X, where a lot of these themes change, like CJ Kurth, when I did his, it's like Cornell chasing the first championship since 1979. He's the next in line of a lot of great Cornell attackmen, and there's the family element too. So there's different things weaving in and out in terms of that storyline. The storyline for Silas Richmond, to be quite honest with you, like the headline of this piece was his chase to be a pro lacrosse player. Like that wasn't the case if I was doing one of these pieces 10 years ago. It would have been just like in the moment, or like with Joey Spallina through X last year. It's like the pressure of 22 to bring a title back to Syracuse. Like the core of the piece of Silas Richmond was not to win a national championship at Albany. Do they want to win a national championship? Of course. But at its core, this piece was being a pro lacrosse player. So does that make sense?
No, and it's awesome that opportunity exists, and I think you guys do a great job showcasing it. And for all the growth that has happened since back in our MLL days, I think it's trending in the right direction, clearly. And to have
and like Silas, I asked Silas, that said, like, okay, like if pro lacrosse doesn't work out, what do you want to do professionally? He's like, I don't have a plan B.
Well, there still are some fun things. I do think we have to. I tuned in and I was like, oh, look at that computer cover on Ryan's computer, the printed out PLL logo. So no, I'm in the office with Ryan every day. Ryan, let's get a look at what was behind the curtain here, and let's show the people why we couldn't just have I was like, maybe there's like an issue with like Apple sponsorship because the broadcast, but no.
This is tell me you have a 6-year-old daughter without telling me you have a 6-year-old daughter. So as I told our producer, Dees, it was like, hey, my daughter kind of got to my computer between last year's draft and this year's draft. Like, is this cool? And so they needed to come up with a solution. Yeah, she got the stickers. It's a giraffe, a lightning bolt, like a sweet car. There's a ketchup bottle, coffee. Yeah,
no rhyme or reason to the location. I really love it. I think you should have gone with it on the broadcast. Yeah, but don't want to take away from the moment at hand. Well, Carc, thanks so much. And I think we've talked about this a few times, but like, this is an amazing accomplishment for all these players. We can dissect it and talk about what should have happened, but all these guys are now going to have a chance to compete in the PLL, and you and Ryan get to watch them and call them, and hopefully they get to exceed all expectations, no matter where they fell in the draft, and can prove why they got picked where they were.
No, for sure. And Mitch, we appreciate your support. I know you watch a ton. Ryan always brings you up, when we're chatting before a game. And, I think the lacrosse world too, and have to realize, like, Ryan is a great gift for the game of lacrosse. And, the way that he's been an advocate of professional lacrosse, and like how he dives into prep, and how serious he is about, giving the platform its due. I think he's an incredible asset for the game of lacrosse. If you watch the games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't watch the games, I'll just say you should, because he breaks it down as well as any analyst in any sport. And that's why I think we're a really good combination, because you bring in this crazy Italian from Yorktown, New York, that maybe does know everyone. I don't know.
Well, the lacrosse is so appreciated. The sport of lacrosse, I mean, basically mirror and reflect everything you just said. It's so kind and generous, and feel the same way back to you in terms of everything that you've done for the game at all levels, really, and just so appreciative to have your passion on the calls, and you know how I feel about you and I, our relationship, and get a chance to work with you. And we're selfishly for this podcast, we're just so appreciative of your time. We've taken up way more than what was allotted. So thank you, Carc, and
No worries. No worries, man. You guys are awesome. Mitch, one last thing too, and I mean this as well. Like, keep us honest too, because I know you're a person who knows the game inside out. You played professional lacrosse for so many years. You obviously know the business side and media and marketing. So, like, anything that you ever see that could help us be better, let us know, because we're always evolving.
Yep, appreciate that. Well, nothing like just coming together and talking lax. So we're lucky to get to do that, and appreciate you joining us for it.
Thanks again, guys. Be well.
Thanks,
Carc.